So I, Shobha and Michael, like, I couldn't answer you when you said hello a minute ago because I was uh,
Oh,
trying to connect to YouTube Live, so I couldn't talk at the same time.
Well, it's fine, Bhante. I can hear you now. I believe we both can.
Yeah, I was unmuted at the time, but I Mr. Udiana, you can hear me now, right?
yes, you can.
okay, friends. So it's 7 o'clock. So we will begin with reciting the Namo Tassa and three refuges for those who like to do that. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang saranang gacchami, Dhammang saranang gacchami, Sanghang saranang gacchami, Dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami. So welcome, friends, to this Wednesday evening Dhamma discussion and meditation practice. So this week we are continuing our discussion of the 12 links of dependent origination, or in Pali, the Paticca Samuppada. And last week we discussed primarily the link between the sankharas, or the mental formations, and consciousness. We saw how it's because of the accumulated karmic accumulations and karma that we've accumulated from the past lives as well as this life that keep on strengthening the sankharas, or habits, formations in the mind, and conditioning the body and mind, and which cause the rebirth. When those sankharas are still strong and they haven't been sort of overcome or neutralized through the practice of Dhamma, then that consciousness gets propelled to another existence, according to the Kama. Now, this week I wanted to discuss how the consciousness creates the mind and body. And this is an important link, especially when discussing the lifetime to lifetime reality or idea of the rebirth. So as I mentioned in one of the first talks when we started this discussion, that the 12 links of dependent origination have an external manifestation as well as an internal manifestation, or they produce effects from lifetime to lifetime, but also from moment to moment. So this link where the consciousness, depending on consciousness, arises name and form, this specifically in relationship to human beings or animals, refers to the mind when it leaves when the person dies in one life, if those sankharas are still strong, if the ego consciousness is still active, or has been cultivated in that previous life, but also the sankharas, the habits, then it seeks life in another existence. And so it would be attracted to the womb of a mother. Let's take that example of a human mother, because that's what most of us are familiar with. And that consciousness, the mother and father produce the material elements that start the one cell, the new little being is a one cell organism, but it needs a spark to activate that cellular division and to keep it alive. And that's the function of the consciousness. So this relinking consciousness that gets attracted to, into the womb acts like the spark that starts creating the body. It starts as a one cell organism, but within a few weeks, little toes and fingers, and the body and shape of a new baby starts to develop I don't know exactly how long, a couple of weeks, a few months. And so that creation of the body depends on that consciousness. Without it, there'll be a miscarriage, and the thing will die. The new being will die if it doesn't have, if that spark of consciousness is not able to sustain itself in the body. So that's the meaning, one meaning of the, depending on the consciousness, it's that relinking consciousness that goes to the next life and produces the mind and body. So in the space of 9 months, the brain, the body, the brain, the nervous system, and the mind basically, gets formed. But as I mentioned, during that time, a woman can have a miscarriage, and for one reason or another, different things might cause that. But the consciousness is not able to sustain itself and to continue developing that baby. So there's a miscarriage and the baby dies. Or sometimes they are stillborn. So, but it's for whatever reason, the consciousness is not able to remain in the body. So that's why then the name and form, doesn't get fully developed, or it winds up being a stillbirth and dies. So that's the meaning of depending on consciousness arises name and form, in this case, mind and body. But there's also the moment-to-moment rebirth. Now, when explaining it in the moment-to-moment rebirth, it's a little bit different. Because from moment to moment, the mind isn't leaving the body and seeking rebirth into another realm, but it creates, from moment to moment, the mind goes on creating the feeling and perception of this body. We feel the body. So, the baby's born and it starts feeling the body, right? It starts feeling cold and hot and painful and pleasant sensations. And then as the child grows up, every moment, knowing your body depends on consciousness, because if you're unconscious, you don't know your body at night when you sleep, because the consciousness is not actually functioning. Basically, for that period while you're in deep sleep, you're not aware of the body. So you can say the mind is not creating the feeling of a body because it's sleeping. And that's one of the functions of sleep is when consciousness stops actively. You dream in sleep, of course, and then the mind can, create a mental body. When it's sleeping, you do things, in your dreams. But as far as the waking state, but our whole life, once we're born until we die, every moment of hearing, seeing, tasting, smelling, touching, and thinking consciousness is arising and passing away. And so that's also considered like a birth and a death, the consciousness. It's a little bit more complicated. I'm going to talk more about it later. But once and along with the mind and body, then dependent on the mind and body arises the sixfold sense base. Now, this is important because, the senses are developed, of course, with the body. But when we're born, like a baby in the womb, it might hear sounds. They're telling us now babies can hear sounds. But generally, their senses haven't contacted the world yet. But once it comes out, the baby comes out of the womb, then it has contact with the senses. Bright lights of the hospital room, the forceps squeezing its head if it's being pulled out that way, or once it comes out and the mother holds the baby, then they start getting contact. But that's dependent on the senses. So the baby comes into contact with the sensory world. So it starts hearing, seeing, smelling, tasting, touching. And that's dependent on having the body and the mind, because it's the mind, the consciousness, that's hearing things, smelling things, tasting, touching things. We don't do it, consciousness does it. And this is what's difficult for people to understand. But anyway, the consciousness, depending on, the consciousness arises, we have consciousness of this mind and body. And then because of the senses, we have the contacts. So contacts arise with the sixfold sense sphere. Now, people might be thinking, well, this is, it might be difficult for them to understand, but it's important to understand for understanding the ideas about impermanence and also no self. So anyway, this is the part of the Paticca Samuppada in which the feeling of ourself arises, and we have the contacts, and consciousness is arising with each of those moments of contact. So in the lifetime to lifetime process, that consciousness is the rebirth linking consciousness, but once the baby is born, then that consciousness is arising with each moment of hearing, seeing, tasting, smelling, touching, and thinking. And each of those is a kind of a birth and a death. That's called moment-to-moment birth and death. Now, in the the lifetime to lifetime Paticca Samuppada, basically we die once, right? So we're going to live, most people living 60, 70, 80, 90 or more years, but they're going to die one time. The body dies one time. But for each moment of hearing, seeing, tasting, smelling, touching, and thinking is a birth and a death of consciousness. And you have to understand something about anicca, or impermanence. We've talked about that before, in order to understand that. So anyway, having the consciousness continue requires this body. Now, if you get killed or you died in an accident suddenly, even a child, young people, a child, anybody, they die, then this mind and body drops dead into consciousness. That's why the consciousness will leave, because it needs a living body in order to function. And then, it loses the contacts of this world, and it may arise in another world. I know, it's difficult to understand, especially those who are not familiar with the idea about rebirth. But even in this life itself, we go on having contact. When you're meditating, you're feeling the body. You might hear sound. You hear the sound of my voice in the guided meditation. You might hear sounds in your room. These are the contacts. The sixfold sense sphere is working. So once we're born, the sixfold sense sphere is, open for business, basically. And our senses are open for business. Unless you close your eyes, okay, it limits your ability to see. But, sounds are always coming in. And if you're deaf, then you may not hear, but you smell and taste. So, the sixfold sense sphere is still there and operating, but it depends on the mind and body. When the body dies, then the senses no longer function in this life. And so that's why you no longer experience the world in the normal way. So the Paticca Samuppada, that in the lifetime to lifetime version, that birth happens one time and death happens one time. But in the moment to moment version, that process of birth and death, it refers to the consciousness and also the object that you're seeing, because our consciousness actually works like a reel of film. If you're familiar with the old, reels of film, each frame of a movie reel is one frame, and it takes thousands or tens of thousands of individual frames to make, even a 1 hour movie. Now with digital, it might be a little bit different, but in the old days, when you went to the, movie theater and you saw that light coming from the back of the theater, that reel of film is running through the projector, and those individual frames are moving so fast that we don't see the individual frame, but there's a tiny space between each frame where, it fits onto the projector and it moves. That gear moves the film forward. And so the film then looks like it's a real smooth thing because we don't see the spaces in between. You don't see it arising and vanishing. But that's how our ordinary consciousness is functioning in the brain. With each moment of contact, consciousness is arising and vanishing, but it's happening millions of times in a second, actually. And that's why we don't see that impermanence. And that's why objects, we don't see that, the birth and death. And so it seems like, everything is real and flowing. But basically, it's a kind of an illusion. And we'll talk more about that later. But anyway, so that's important to understand that. In order to understand the Paticca Samuppada, you have to understand impermanence. And impermanence means that each moment of sensory perception, we experience the world through our nervous system and brain. That's why if something happens to it, this world disappears. When you die, for some reason, your brain gets impaired, or the heart stops beating, and death happens quickly, and this world is gone for you. Because it depends on all these different factors. So that transition from, the consciousness creates the mind and body, but it's not only mind and body, it's name and form. So name and form means even when you're looking at the screen and you might be seeing my face, right? So what you're actually seeing is color and shape appearing on your screen. And because of memory, you remember that's Bhante Rahula. But that's a memory in your mind. If somebody else's face was there that you didn't know, you would know who it was. And so the form is actually the material elements that you're seeing or even hearing. You hear a sound, that's the material form, but the name is the memory of it that you've learned as a child. When you start learning language, they point to, that's daddy, that's mommy, that's kitty, doggy, and so on. So the name is sort of the label that we give to objects. And it needs both there. So without the name, you won't recognize what an object is, and it's not going to do much in your mind. So that name and form consciousness is what focuses on that needs that name and form. That's what then, you react to the object, and that increases our consciousness, the craving and desire to see and hear more and more, which helps to drive on the consciousness. So the name and form is for all the six senses. It's in fact, there's three things required for a sense experience. And that is that there has to be, your sense organ has to be working, and there has to be a sound available. And your ear has to be working. So those three, it's called triple conjunction. And this happens with contact. So depending on the sixfold sense base, you have contact. And contact is defined as the coming together of those three things. The sense organ is working. The sense object has to be in proximity to the sense organ, and there has to be consciousness or attention to it in order for there to be a full-blown sense experience. Because take the example of, let's say you're engrossed in, even watching this program, or you're reading a book, or somehow you're distracted, and even though there's other sounds in the room, you may not hear them. But your ear is still working, and the sounds are within range of your ear. But if your attention is not there, if your attention is distracted in somewhere else, there's not going to be hearing of that particular object, or seeing of it, or smelling of it. And that's important because craving depends on the contact. I'm going to talk about that more next time. Before I forget it, in case I happen to not mention it, next week we're not going to have this Zoom program because I will be in Canada leading a retreat in Halifax, Nova Scotia. So next Wednesday there won't be this Zoom program. Anyway, so coming back to this Paticca So we talked about, the lifetime to lifetime process of Paticca, when the consciousness creates the mind and body of the new being, and the senses are created, come along with that. When the baby's born, you have the sixfold sense sphere, and then you have the contacts, and that's what then drives the rest of the life. The whole life from the time you were born is driven by contacts of hearing, seeing, tasting, smelling, touching, and thinking, which are coming and going very quickly. And we're creating karma about it. But on the moment-to-moment process, that whole process is happening internally within the brain and the nervous system. So even the birth is the birth of, the sense of I and self. And then with each moment of consciousness, there's a death. So birth and death in the meditative sense refers to the birth and death of consciousness in each moment of hearing, seeing, smelling, tasting, touching, and thinking. Now that's why unless you meditate, and especially unless you do the Vipassana style of meditation where you're tuning in to impermanence and trying to listen and observe this process actually happening from moment to moment in a very concentrated state of mind, then you will start to understand the meaning of it. But the problem is people that don't meditate, they can't make heads or tails out of what I'm talking about, really, and they think it's a bunch of malarkey or something because they have no idea. There's no way you can understand that unless you're able to meditate and, have some experience in learning how to just observe the different things coming through your mind, because normally we don't observe them. We're continually reacting and clinging with the sense of I in them. So anyway, now I'd like to, having said that much, I'd like to open it up to see if any of you have any questions about any of those links so far, and especially the consciousness producing name and form, or the six senses and contact. So this evening we basically covered those three other links. So, okay, I see a hand there, a golden hand of Damon. So Damon, do you have a question?
Yeah, I thought that we had gotten all the way up to contact last time, and that we were going to talk about grasping and craving tonight. Did we
Not
get
as
that?
far as I remember. I didn't go into craving and grasping. I might have just mentioned it very briefly, like I mentioned tonight. I mentioned some of these things very briefly, like birth and death. But last week I was talking mostly about how the volitional formations produce the consciousness.
Okay, so we'll talk next week about craving.
Well, next week I won't be having this program because I'll be gone the whole week, and I won't have the opportunity to do this program next week because I'll be conducting a retreat the whole week. So it will have to be in 2 weeks.
Right, because I mean, everything up till now is determined. You have told us, it's everything up till now is determined by karma anyway. There's nothing we can do to change it until we get to craving.
Right.
Yeah, so that's the exciting part.
Or even feeling, you can start to do something about it with feeling.
Oh.
But yeah, craving, grasping, and becoming is the karmic process, and I'll talk about that the next time we meet.
One thing that we could do with the feeling.
What?
What you said, there is something we can start to intervene at the feeling stage when we notice pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, right?
I don't want to give away all my secrets now, It's,
Thank you.
yeah, first we have to identify, and you have to observe in your mind how your mind is reacting. You can see that desire arising from a pleasurable feeling. You can see the aversion arising from a painful feeling. So the first thing is to observe that process and try not to get sucked into it, to create this detachment or buffer zone objective awareness so that you're not, building that idea of, you're not allowing craving to arise. It's just feeling, you're examining it as a vibration and so on. But I'll talk more about that next time. But I wanted to see if people are clear, have any questions specifically about this consciousness and name and form.
Bhante, could you just please elaborate a bit from the formations to the consciousness? Please, thank you.
I thought I did that last week.
I'm sorry, I missed it.
The whole
I
week.
missed it last.
So go back and listen.
Oh,
Go
well,
back and listen to last.
I wanted to just ask you very briefly, if you can just go very briefly, that's all.
Well, the volitional formations, try to imagine this little analogy, okay? let's say the volitional formations are like the gasoline in the tank of your car. And every time you're driving, but then you have to keep putting more gasoline in the tank. So the volitional formations are the habits that we keep strengthening and recreating over and over and over again in our actions, like telling lies, stealing, scratching an itch, hear a sound, look over there. All these are volitional formations that are etched in the nervous system, and they gain strength. So they become, habits by repeating, by repetition only. And that's what produces the consciousness. It's like, as long as there's gas in the tank, the car is going to keep going, right? So every time we repeat a habit, repeat ignorance, strengthen our sense of self, this is like putting more gas into the tank, that the consciousness will keep on going and going and going and going. And at the time of death, it will go to the next life because the gasoline is still there. But if you stop putting gas in a tank by practicing the Dhamma and developing, deep levels of meditation and reduce greed, hatred, and delusion, then that's like driving the car, and you're going to exhaust the gasoline, the built-up gasoline that's in the car. Eventually, it's going to be depleted, and the car is going to stop. That means consciousness will not go on into ignorance and create, the rest of the links,
Yeah,
create mind and body and so on.
yeah, understood. Thank you so much.
Okay. Is there any other? Okay, let me see something at some chat questions came up. Okay. Question, is consciousness permanent then? If it leaves the body at death and then goes to another life? That's a very good question. Because consciousness is not even permanent right now while you're living. That means, as I mentioned, each moment of hearing, seeing, tasting, and smelling, touching, and thinking is like a birth and a death of consciousness. It's not permanent, but a continuity is there. Just like in the movie roll of film, once one frame has gone through, basically it's not coming back, because the movie is a continuation of hundreds and thousands or millions of individual frames that are being run through the projector. Or let's say an animated film, that's thousands of drawings have to be drawn for each tiny movement of a character in a cartoon, like Donald Duck. And so each of those is a birth and a death. But the illusion of permanence arises because we don't see the space in between the birth and the death, because it's so quick and our mind is dull. And because of our clinging, we don't see that space in between, in which the consciousness dies and before it arises again, which is present moment awareness. So that's the problem. You see, people think the consciousness is permanent because they haven't no way to see how it's impermanent, the way that our nervous system is, operates. That's why the Buddha's technique of the Vipassana meditation is out of this world. I mean, even scientists don't even know it. They don't even know how to do that. And that's why they don't believe it. You can only understand it through a very specialized form of meditation. But when you actually experience it, you go, wow, it's mind-blowing. When you see a moment of consciousness actually arise and vanish, it'll blow your mind. Okay, so when the body, as I mentioned, when it leaves this body, the consciousness, it arises very quickly, it finds another place to re-arise again, and then it keeps on going through that process of birth and death again. And it's very complicated to try to explain. This is one of the mysteries, and that's why these things can only really be understood through meditation. When you actually start to get close to observing how this process works, you start to get the, what are called insights into that. Why does feeling come before perception? I'll talk about that when we come back in 2 weeks, because that's what we'll be talking about that then. Needs a lot more time to talk about these things. My understanding is that we go through the 5 aggregates every moment, that it is so fast unless you are very mindful. That's right. Every moment of hearing, seeing, tasting, smelling, touching, and thinking, all those 5 aggregates come together and cease. That means you have the material aggregate, then you have feeling, perception, volition, and consciousness. They come together in a microsecond to cognize the object and vanish, but then they arise again a microsecond later. And it takes hundreds or thousands of the individual arising and vanishings just to basically recognize an object, in the space of just a few seconds. Like, let's say I'm sitting here and all of a sudden I feel a fly land on the back of my head, which I just did. Then it takes a few, because I'm talking here, it takes a couple of those seconds for me to realize even a fly landed on my head. To take many of those individual arising and vanishings. So therefore, it is very fast. In fact, the Buddha said it's 10 to the 24th power of times in a finger snap or blink of an eye, that process is happening. This is about neurons firing in the brain. Ask any neuroscientist, and they'll tell you, yes, neurons firing in the brain is like those moments of hearing, seeing, tasting, smelling, touching, and thinking, triggering off the nervous system. And that's happening millions of times, even in a second. Even science neurosurgeons will tell you that. The brain is firing. Look at a graph. An EEG or ECG, whatever they call it, a brain scan or even a heartbeat thing, graph, even a hearing thing. You see all those, the peaks and valleys of a graph. Each of those is like a moment of hearing, seeing, tasting, smelling, touching, and thinking, arising and vanishing. So check it out next time. It's very interesting. Get a graph from somewhere. Either a sound or that's the easiest one to probably get. If you have music, and you're editing music, you can see each of those fluctuations, different fluctuations is arising and vanishing. So that can help you, give you an idea about how it's working actually. So, if you're skeptical, get a graph on a hearing thing, or if you're familiar with the music, editing music videos, that's how you can slow it down where you can actually see the spaces in between those. And so that's very similar to how in meditation we slow down or we speed up the process in able to see those moments. Consciousness creates name and form, or body and mind. Can you please explain the mind in this case? The mind is the naming. The mind is feeling, perception, volition, and consciousness. All those 4 aggregates make up what we call the mind, but there's not just one thing called the mind. It's a mental process. And consciousness is one, but it needs feeling and perception to name it. Because you name it by saying that's a painful feeling. So you've named it. It's got a different name than a pleasant feeling. And then you give it some form. You call it my knee. It's a pain in my knee. Or you're seeing this face on your screen, and you know that the shape of the head is the form, the material vibrations. But your mind, because of memory, you call me Rahula, right? That's a name, isn't it? Isn't it? Every time you recognize somebody, Johnny, Susie, Bhante, Rahula, you've given it a name, and that's a mental memory. So all these things, you see a lion head here, you see a cabinet, you see all that is name and form, just going like this. You look across the screen, all these different things. You can vaguely recognize them, and you know, thousands of those moments have already gone by in the last 10 seconds, but we don't see them. Okay. It is not the physical mind. The physical mind is the process. You know, the consciousness is not physical, but the consciousness needs physical in order to manifest. That's why if there's no senses are not working, you become unconscious. Only when allowed, you're sleeping, right, at night? And then all of a sudden a big boom happens in your house, and immediately you wake up. That's because sound has penetrated through the sleep barrier and awoken to the nervous system, and now you are hearing. So, you know, that's the contact. But it needs the sound. If the sound is not there, you go on sleeping. Or if you're bored and, you know, you go to sleep while I'm talking. So, you know, the form needs the name to exist, and the name is nothing without a form. So that's why they're called name and form. They come together, or mind and body. Okay. Is the brain just another? What is the physical brain? Physical brain is just like a computer hardware, a hard drive in a computer, or maybe the software. I don't know. Some of you computer buffs might explain it more than me. But it's just the physical aspect of the brain. You know, they can cut the brain out of a person's head, but the mind is no longer there. Nothing's going through it. It's not seeing, hearing, nothing after the person dies. But the consciousness can't experience the world without the brain, especially in this case of a human being. So again, these things are a little bit difficult to understand on the intellectual level. That's why, you know, it requires more meditation to more clearly understand it. Okay? Okay, friends, I think we'll go ahead and stop there. So again, remember, we won't be having a program next Wednesday, and because I'm leaving on this Friday, I don't know if I have a chance to send out a reminder about it next week. So, you know, in the weekly mailing that I send out, maybe I will send one out on Friday to say there's no meeting next week. Okay? Okay, friends, so let's take a short break and come back and see if we can somehow, focus our minds to get some insights into how quickly, the senses are working in the consciousness, okay? Okay, we'll come back in a few minutes. Okay, friends, so try to stand straight, relax your arms at the sides, just gently close your eyes. Try to feel your eyes resting in the socket. You're just feeling those eyes, that's the contact. Cells in the eyes making contact, producing sensation. It requires this body because you have a mind and body and the senses. That contact arises. The feeling in your eyes is the feeling, the sensation. You now begin some deep, slow breathing, feeling the expanding of your abdomen, rib cage, and upper chest. Hold the air in for 2 seconds and slowly breathe out. Just take a few more deep, slow breaths, 3-part breaths, cultivating this mindfulness. Breathing in, letting go of the past and future. Breathing out, standing here and now. Breathing in, letting go of the past and future. Breathing out, standing here and now. We're going to coordinate these movements with the breathing, repeating each one 3 times. On the next in-breath, raise the arms over the head, interlock your fingers, turn the palms up, straighten the arms, stretch your head back, stretch upwards. On the out-breath, release your fingers, arms back to the sides. Again, in-breath. Stretch the hands up, bend back a little bit. Feel the sensations. Release the fingers, out breath. Once more, in. Third time, hold that upward stretch longer, bend back a little more. Feel all those sensations, those feelings. Out breath. Close the eyes, relax. Keep feeling the body. So all those different sensations you're feeling, like the head on top, feet pressing the floor, hands at the sides, that's the consciousness creating the idea of a body. The mind is cognizing it. So it's the mind and body dependent on the consciousness. Creates the mind and body, which has the sense organs on it, which is allowing the contacts, all the sensations, you're aware of them because of contact and consciousness. Okay, on the next in-breath, lift up on the toes while raising the arms over the head, facing the hands toward each other and stretch up. Out breath, arms back to the sides. Use the in-breath to help lift up the body. Stretch. Out. Once more in. Stretch. Let's close the eyes, relax. And see how many different sensations you can notice. If you're noticing many different sensations, each of those sensations requires a different arising of consciousness to feel it. So even in the space of that 15-second exercise, feeling those sensations, there's hundreds, if not thousands, of arising and vanishing, occurring moments of consciousness. But because you don't see, the mind is slow and dull, it just runs them all together, and you don't see those, you know, those individual moments. Consciousness appears to be something continuous. It's the way you contemplate. Okay, next we'll do the side bending. On the in-breath, raise both arms up. Keep your fingers and arms straight, close to your head. On the out-breath, bend over your right side. And just feel all the different changing sensations. In-breath, lift up. And the other side, out-breath. In-breath up. Again to the right, out-breath. In. Out. Once more to each side. And the out breath, lower the arms. Okay, and every different sensation, every different sound is a different arising and vanishing of consciousness. Again, we don't see that. We just think it's me that's hearing these things. We don't understand the how. Just remember standing, standing. Next we'll do squatting or knee bending. On the next in-breath, lift up on the toes, right, raise the arms up front for balance. Out-breath, bend the knees, lower down, for balance on the balls of the feet. And all the different sensations, and the in-breath, lift up. On the toes, out-breath. All those continually changing sensations because of the continually changing consciousness. Once more. relax. Feel the increased heartbeat. Feel the outline of the body in the mind's eye. Just remember standing, standing. Each moment that you know you have a body, that's another moment of consciousness. It's arising and vanishing millions of times a second. Losing the idea of I am living, doing these things. Actually, it's no different than an animated movie. Okay, now spread the feet apart. Wider the better. Hold the arms out at the sides. We do the twisting from right to left. And breathe in. And the out breath, twist to the right. Keep your eyes focused on the hand going back. In breath back to the front. And go to the left side out breath. In breath front. Then to the right out breath. Let your feet turn with the body as you twist. Once more to each side. Lower the arms, relax. Feel each foot pressing the floor. Noticing your right foot, noticing your left foot, or different moments of consciousness. Noticing your hands, your head, different moments of consciousness. Contact. Now we'll do the forward and backward bending, keeping the feet apart. Wider the better. Let the hands touch the front of your legs. And breathe in. On the out breath, bend forward. Let your hands slide to the kneecaps. The first time, keep the head lifted up, looking out straight ahead. You're flat in the back and the spine like a tabletop. The legs locked straight. In breath, lift up. Move the hands under the buttocks for support. Let the head go back. The out breath, gently bend backwards. Keep your eyes open. Look at the ceiling. Feel the sensations. In breath, lift up. Next out breath, let your hands slide below the knees. So keep your head up, looking out straight ahead. Feel the extra stretch in the back of your legs as you bend down more. In breath, lift up. Again, the back bends, careful, out breath. In breath, lift up. And the third time, let your hands come down as far as you can toward your feet, ankles or feet, and then hold on a little longer. Keep the legs straight, let the little bones in the lower spine stretch out. Just feel all those different sensations. It's consciousness arising and vanishing hundreds, thousands of times. Produce that sense of yourself living. In breath, lift up. Hands around the back again. Back bend, careful. In breath, lift up. In the out breath, just relax your shoulders and arms. Feel each foot pressing the floor. Even while you're feeling the body, you may hear different sounds coming and going. Those are also different moments of consciousness. Anytime you notice or recognize anything different, it's a separate consciousness that arose and vanished. The whole 12 links of the dependent origination make a complete cycle. We now bring the legs and feet back closer together. Just do one last exercise, the head turning from right to left. On an in-breath, turn your head to the right, and look over your right shoulder, twist of the neck. Out breath, turn all the way back to the left, look over the left shoulder. In breath back to the right. Out breath left. In right. Out left. Once more to each side. Let the head stop in the center. Just close the eyes, feel the whole body. Feel the outline of the standing body. In the mind's eye, feel all those activated sensations, vibrations, each of those, the separate arising and vanishing of mind and body, consciousness, contact. Okay, now go ahead and come back to our seats, get ready for the sitting. So just get comfortable in the sitting posture. Just gently close your eyes. Just feel your eyes resting in the eye sockets. Feel the head balanced on top of the neck. Just let the awareness kind of move down through the body, feeling those different parts of the body, relaxing them. Just feel your shoulders. Feel your chest and stomach area. Feel the clothing touching the skin. Feel your hands and fingers touching each other, or touching your legs. Feel your buttocks pressing the seat. Start to feel the inward curve of the lower spine, how that supports the weight of the upper body, feeling the head balanced on top. See if you can kind of feel or imagine the spinal column going up to the base of the spine, up to the base of the head. Just remind yourself of, make a note of sitting, sitting. Feel the feet tucked underneath the body. See if you can just notice those different parts of the body, the feet, the hands, the buttocks, pressing the seat. Shoulders, the head, the eyes. Feeling each of those things as a different moment of contact, a moment of consciousness that arose and vanished, followed by many other ones. Now try to hold that outline of the sitting body in the mind's eye. Take a few more deep, slow breaths, developing this present moment awareness of breathing in, letting go of the past and future. Breathing out, sitting here and now. Breathing in, letting go of the past and future. Breathing out, sitting here and now. Breathing in, feeling the whole body. Breathing out, feeling the whole body. And now we'll try to count our breaths from 1 to 10 to develop a more continuous concentration on the breathing. I'll do the counting for you. Just try to follow that with your breathing and counting. So with the next expanding in breath, mentally count to 1. Feel the brief pause. With the contracting out breath, also count to 1. Feel the last bit of air go out to the lungs. The next in breath, 2. Out breath 2. In 3. Out 3. In 4. Out 4. In 5. Out 5. In 6. Out 6. In 7. Out 7. In 8. Out 8. In 9. Out 9. In 10. Out 10. Now just continue the counting, or if you like, you can try the counting again once from 1 to 10 by yourself to see if you can make it from 1 to 10 by yourself without the mind wandering off, getting lost in thoughts, and going to sleep. Or if you already have good concentration, then just begin just constantly remembering, breathing in, sitting, breathing out, sitting. Even while you're observing the breathing, see how that observation is just a continuing change of sensation, requiring different moments of consciousness. Just try to tune into the 4 phases of each breath cycle. The expanding in breath and the brief pause. The contracting out breath and the brief pause. Observing all those different little sensations. Just a continual flow of changing sensation. Be alert for thoughts or urges coming into the mind. Each thought requires a different moment of consciousness to see it. Basically, all those different sensations you're noticing are creating the mind and body with each rising consciousness. Sense of I am doing that arises, creating the idea of a mind and body. Contacts through the different senses, the body, sounds, thoughts, visible objects. Having this mind and body produces the 6 senses, access to the 6 senses, and contact. You kind of contemplate that if you like. Think about it. Just listen very closely to how quickly they all change, all the sensations, sounds, thoughts, continually changing, arising, vanishing. Breathing in, sitting. Breathing out, sitting. From time to time, take a few deep, slow breaths to help stay grounded, awake in the breathing body. It's gradually opening up to that flow of impermanence, of changing sensations, contacts, depending on the mind and body and senses, arises contact. Sensations, feelings arise from the contact. Consciousness is there, cognizing them. Consciousness needs this mind and body and the senses in order to function in the world. Just try to see how many different sensations, sounds, thoughts you can notice in the space of just a few seconds. Keep refocusing, just trying to notice how quickly so many sensations, thoughts, and sounds are just constantly changing, arising, vanishing. The flow of impermanence. To keep up with the flow of impermanence. Breath by breath, moment by moment, knowing each of those different objects, moments is a string of consciousnesses arising and vanishing, just neurons firing in the brain. Each time the mind clings or holds on to a particular sensation, thought, or sound, that stops the flow of impermanence. mind clings to that object as being real, creates other thoughts, actions based on it. Try to observe that. because you have a mind and body and the senses that produces that contact, sound, hearing arises, creating a feeling. Oh, meditation's over now. You want it to end or not to end. Nati janam apanyacha panyanati ajayitu yam hi janancha panyacha siri nibbana santiki. There's no concentration without wisdom, no wisdom without concentration. One who is both concentrated and wise is close to peace and freedom. And thus spoke the Buddha. Now mindfully place your hands at the edge of the knees. Take another deep breath as you breathe in. Stretch the head back. Pull on the knees to arch your spine back. Look up at the ceiling. Lift the head up on an in-breath. On the out-breath, press the chin. A little notch at the top of the chest to stretch the neck vertebrae. Lift the head up level on an in-breath and relax on the out-breath. Just keep feeling the body, feeling those sensations. I invite you to end the meditation by chanting the word sadhu 3 times slowly, doing the chanting on a long out breath to feel those vibrations in the body and mind. So take a deep breath. Sadhu. Sadhu. Breathe. Okay, friends, so this brings our meditation practice to a close tonight, and hope some of you might have been able to have enough concentration or centeredness in order to see how quickly contacts are arising and vanishing, and the continual change of our objects in our consciousness, sensations, sounds, thoughts. So try to keep, paying attention to that. If you have sufficient concentration during the week, even doing the M&Ms during the week, to stop every hour or whenever you can during the day, to bring the mind back. Just pay attention to that, even for a minute. Tune the mind into the present moment, feeling the body, listening to sounds. So work on that for the next week, 2 weeks. We'll come back and continue our look at the Paticca Samuppada, looking at contacts, feelings, craving, grasping. Okay? So again, next week we won't have a program, but I would suggest maybe you can go back in our archive of YouTube and look up, because I've given these talks before also. They're somewhere in our YouTube archive, Paticca Samuppada and the guided meditations. Okay, so until then, be safe, be well, be mindful, be wise. And Namo Buddhaya.
Namo Buddhaya.
Thank you, Bhante. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you, Bhante.
Good
Yeah.
night.
Bhante.
Good night.
Night. Have a safe trip and return.
Thank you.
Great retreat. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night to everyone.
Good night.